Welcome back once again to Kevin Pollak's Chat Show. I am, as always, Chat Show. How are you? That's the question. You're not buffering. Hey, I hope you had yourself a fantastic Saturday night. It is technically the Saturday night before Halloween when you would go to a Halloween party, I presume. Halloween this year falling on a Wednesday, smack dab in the middle of the week, kind of fucks up a lot of plans, I'll be honest with you. I don't know who did this calendar thing, but every 7 years, the Wednesday's not working for me. I don't feel it. I can kind of stretch it to Tuesday, and you know what? Thursday's swinging and happening. Wednesday, go fuck yourself. I don't have time for this shit. So Saturday night is the night, and you don't want to do Saturday after Halloween because it's November already. What the fuck? Halloween was... So this was the Saturday. Jamie? You want to report on your Saturday night Halloween goings-on? Since you, I think, had quite the festivities.
Well, I had two things. I had an obligation. I am on a trivia team. Our name is Nickel Back to the Future. Nickel
Back to the Future.
Because it's something you loathe and something you love.
Don't race through these funny titles.
But we were number 2, I think, in all of Los Angeles, as it was our ranking, and we competed against 31 other teams in this big King Trivia tournament. We did not do so well in the tournament because I think where we tend to play, the questions are quite pop culture heavy, and we're very good at them.
You don't need to explain why out of 32 teams you did not win.
We did manage to win the Team Spirit Award.
What? Team Spirit?
We got a Team Spirit Award.
What the fuck else matters?
Because whenever they would call our team name, we would always scream a quote from Back to the Future.
And what was your favorite quote from Back to the Future that you screamed? And remember, it should be trivia related.
What was my... Well, I was the one that came up with it, and the first one we did was Great Scott.
Great Scott's not trivia related, though.
It's not trivia related. What are you trying to ask
I'm saying trivia suggests you know things that other people don't know.
Well, we wanted to... we screamed, "This is your cousin Marvin Barry."
Now, see, now that's trivia.
And "I hate manure." We screamed that one.
That's way trivia.
But yeah, there you go.
"This is your cousin Marvin. Marvin Barry." Yeah, he wants us to know that he's talking to his cousin Chuck Berry.
Yes.
So, of course, he says his own last name into the phone.
Yes.
Because that's possible. Fucking ridiculous. All right. So, congratulations on your team spirit.
And then I went to a small costume party.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't play it down. It was fantastic. It was festive. One could even say it was gay.
Yes.
That's how festive it was.
It was a gay old time.
It was so festive it was gay.
Yes.
Well, congratulations on the award.
It's like a participant award.
In the yabba dabba do time.
Yes.
I sat home and watched the San Francisco Giants win game number 3 of this year's World Series. I'm born in the city of San Francisco, so of course this is an unbelievably freakishly fun World Series. I went to game 1 of the World Series, which is why I brought it up. Well, I took my brother. He and I had not been to a World Series game together, so that was pretty fucking righteous. And then the panda, not the animal, not the marsupial, I should say. Someone pointed out to me that a panda bear, not a bear, the largest land marsupial. I'm not buying it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. But pouch? Panda's got a pouch? I didn't think it did. Panda, also the nickname of one of the Giants players who hit 3 home runs, count them 1, 2, 3, in game 1, his first 3 at-bats. And needless to say, it was a raucous good time at AT&T Park. There's my brother and I right there. If those of you watching us live and around the world on the iTunes the next day or whenever you're getting us. If you're just listening, this is not a great photo for you to see that's on the screen right now. But that's us on the field at batting practice. My brother Craig, 2 years older. Odd side note, runs a flooring company that laid every square inch of floor at that park. Yeah, was the foreman. So he watched that whole park rise up from the sand. And then, second side note, he says, "Come by, I'll give you a private tour." This back in 2000, a week before the place opens and they play their first home game. So I go by, he's giving me a tour right on the grass, very near where we were in that photo, and out walks Barry Bonds, who had just come back from spring training, he himself seeing the park for the very first time in that moment. Needless to say, photos were taken. He might have recognized me from A Few Good Men. It's not important. What is important is I love me, my Giants. So up 3 games. Jeff Daniels and I have been going at each other. I want to show you a little clip from the Twitter. MLB.com was kind enough to send myself and my brother to the game. And then they asked I be the face of San Francisco Giants on the MLB.com Twitter feed. And then Jeff Daniels from Detroit Tigers. There it is now. There's a little clip, those of you watching again. Jeff Daniels writes, once again, I find myself congratulating at Kevin Pollak. If you'll excuse me, this is after game 2. I'm going to go for a walk now to, like, Ohio. He wrote that from Michigan. Hence the funny. All right, so Jeff Daniels and I have been yelling at each other on Twitter, and it's been really fun. But I found out that when your team loses, in this case gets their asses handed to them, it allows you to be much funnier. See, just now when I said that, that sounds like boasting, and that's not funny. So he's getting all the laughs, and I'm getting all the wins. And I know which one he would prefer. All right. I have only one other piece of business, and we're going to get to our guest today because I'm about as fucking excited as I've been. This is show 160, by the way, 160. We hit that mark today. We were supposed to do 40 shows per year the first 3 years. We're now 3.5 years into this. So, yeah, we've had some weeks off. Go fuck yourself. Why can't we take time off? Why the attitude? Let's watch the tone. Speaking of World Series, I'm leaving tomorrow morning for Las Vegas. Well, I'll be an announcer for a little while in the booth for the final table of the main event of the World Series of Poker on the ESPN. Airs live on the ESPN tomorrow night, and I'm going to be there in the booth for a little while calling some hands. You may recall I've been yapping up my own damn finishing in the World Series of Poker main event this year. So they invited me back to be a big shot in the booth with Antonio Esfandiari, I believe is how you say his name. Help me. Where is Rhonda when you need her, by the way? That's all I got for you. Oh, the last thing is my own damn book drops this week. I want to talk to my guest today about his book, which I'm excited to read, and also his process about how he wrote his. My book, let's throw up a photo, in case you ever wondered what I would look like as a gay Asian man. They photoshopped my eyes to within an inch of my life. I may still and reserve the right to sue my publisher. I know it's funny, but now let's take a look at the photo. And you tell me what the fuck is going on. Jamie likes to point out the little tuft of hair they added too and shadowed in at the top middle of my forehead. Try to take your eyes off of that and back down to my eyes, which actually almost look fish-like. All right. So I approved the galley version of the photo, and then someone at the publisher decided they'd do me a solid and Photoshop my eyes before releasing the book. That someone may be the cause of a lawsuit. More stories to come. See, I can make fun of it, but if I then decide to sue them later, it's, you know, they could use this as proof in a court saying, clearly it didn't bother you, sir. It fucking bothered me and still does. And I'm going to sue. I'm pretty sure I'm going to sue. I may sue just as a second wave of publicity for the book. Which is not a bad idea, actually. There it is again. Fucking haunts me. All right. Sammy Levine is not here. I mean, he's here, but he's not here.
What's he doing?
Exactly.
Where's he got?
We're going to hear the story. But he is back from shooting Do No Harm, which debuts in February on the National Broadcasting Company. All right. We ask you to write to us at contact@kevinpollackschatshow.com. So please do participate in the show, you sons of bitches. Contact@kevinpollackschatshow.com. We ask you to write us for a Larry King game. Write us Ask Kevin. You can ask me or the crew any questions at all. Or today's Dan Lehman writes to us from Atherton, California. How I do KPCS. How do you do the show? So he writes us thusly. My dogs love you, even though they don't know it. That's how he starts the letter. Lovely. I discovered KPCS and began downloading the podcast about episode 40, or 120 episodes ago. Every night I walk our 2 golden retrievers for a half hour and listen for 30 minutes of the show. So the dogs get about 4 days of walk per show. Thanks for doing the math on that, Don. I hadn't quite figured that out. Or, he writes in parentheses, in the case of Eddie Izzard, about Eddie Izzard episode, about 37 walks. Eddie's a talker. I mostly listen, but can easily glance at my iPod if there's something I need to see. I only wandered into an oncoming traffic once during Dana Gould's magnificent Larry King marathon. This is often the best 30 minutes of my day, which I realize says something terrible about my life, but thanks nonetheless to you and the whole crew for a consistently great show. Both my and the dog's health is better for it. Truman and Tova would say thanks if they could see attached photo, and then he sent a photo of the dogs. There they are. One of them is yawning, I'm going to hope. The other one has a ball in its mouth. Again, I'm going to hope. Otherwise, there's something wrong with both dogs. That's Dan Lehman from Atherton. And he also sent in a Larry King game. Fuck, he's going to get a T-shirt. Damn it. If you write to us at contact@kevinpollaksshotshow.com and you give us a Larry King game that we use, I will send you a T-shirt. So please include your size and address. Our guest today gets one as well. Today I tweet. Yesterday I tweeted. Often I have twat. That's how we learned to conjugate tweet when I was in school. Pascagoula, Mississippi, what's your question for Joyce DeWitt? I have a feeling.
That's funny because Kenny constantly tells me that I look like Joyce DeWitt.
Oh, nice. It all comes full circle.
And then it started happening now at my work, where I said, my friend thinks I look like Joyce DeWitt, so now they're all like, you do look like Joyce DeWitt.
Wow. So the people you work with are 70? How do they know? How do they know what Joyce DeWitt?
Kenny's 31, and he knew the reference.
Kenny knows every reference. All right.
He does.
I hold here before me a brand new album. I think we have a larger photo we can put up on the screen, but I just wanted to show you what an autograph version looks like, because this is the one I'm taking home, you son of a bitch. There's the larger version there on your screen. It's called Remember, and it's astounding. It is so fucking great. We're going to talk to the masterful Micky Dolenz right now. We're going to start by talking about this album, because I know this was, according to research anyways, ridiculously personal for you to do these songs. Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't think it'd be that personal.
Yes, yes it was.
I mean, first of all, choosing the songs, because I imagine there's 12 songs on the CD, on the album. I imagine there are more than 12 that you have a personal connection to, given your career. So, did you start with like 20 and boil it down to 15 and finally kill a few babies and get down to 12?
I started with the stories about the different songs. It started out as this idea of an audio scrapbook of my life, and songs that either meant something to me or were significant, or milestones.
Right.
Songs I should have done. There's a couple of should-haves and didn't.
Right.
And I started telling the stories, and I'd done some of these songs on stage at times, telling the story of why I was singing this song, especially if it was not a monkey tune, because if I do non-monkey stuff in a solo show, the audience sometimes goes, "Wah!" But if I explain,
it'd be nice if they made that sound as a group.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
5,000 people. Wah!
Why would you do that?
Well, I used to do Johnny Be Good, for instance, in my solo show. And they would look up and go, why is he covering Chuck Berry? Until I started telling the story. I'm going to do a Chuck Berry tune now, and the reason is because this was my audition piece for the Monkees. This is the song that got me the gig. And then it's,
yeah, right? Now they're celebrating.
Now they're celebrating. Now they're along with me. They come along with me. So when the producer and I, David Harris, wonderful producer, arranger, started talking about the album, it sort of turned into this scrapbook idea. And we started working backwards a little bit from the songs that had the best stories. Because I did have more songs I wanted to do, but it turned out that attaching the story to the song made a big difference in the intent.
Yeah. For example, I love the story about, let's see, which song is it? So I don't forget. Good Morning, #1 song.
The Beatlemania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The story attached to that one is incredibly touching and fucking fantastic.
Well, it was a big moment in my life. It was when I first went over to England on a press junket for the tour. And I was set up with a photo op kind of thing with Paul McCartney to have dinner with Paul at his house in Maida Vale. And just he and I, we just sat and chatted. And imbibed and chatted and imbibed and took a few photos. And it was a big press op thing, Monkey Meets Beatle sort of, thing. And he invited me down to the next day. He said, "You want to come down to the studio, Abbey Road Studios, where we're recording this new album called Sergeant something." Well,
yeah.
Shit, I can never.
Yeah, Sergeant Pepper.
Yeah, was it Sergeant Dolkov? Whatever happened to that album? It was so good.
Yeah. You'd think more people would know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's terrible. They just disappeared.
If I may, the cover, a little busy. A little busy for me.
That's probably why.
Yeah.
Just didn't do well in Iraq.
No.
What's that? So he invites me down. At the time, of course, I don't know it. I just know I'm being invited down to a Beatles session. And so it was the next day. A limo picks me up. And I guess... I don't know what I was expecting, some sort of Beatle freak-out, psycho, jello, love-in, fun fest, crazy thing.
Like the cover of the album suggests.
Like the cover of the album. And I got dressed accordingly in my paisley bell-bottoms and my tie-dyed underwear and my hair up in beads and curls and little linen glasses and stuff. And
Did you really?
Oh, absolutely.
Nehru jacket?
Oh, yeah. No, worse.
Yeah, much worse.
Yeah, I look like a cross between Ronald McDonald and Charlie Manson. And I show
Ronald
up
Manson.
at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at Abbey Road Studios.
And scared the piss out of him.
When I walk in, it looks like my high school gymnasium. It's like fluorescent lighting, nobody there but the 4 guys in jeans and T-shirts, sitting in folding chairs. Middle of the day, George Martin up in the booth, and they're just playing. And I'm like, where are the girls?
Where's the lovin'?
Where's the colors?
And then John says, "Are you going to a masquerade party?"
Something like that. Actually, he said, quote, "Hey, Monkey Man." That's what he called me.
Yeah.
Monkey Man. Hey, Monkey Man, you want to
I love in the research where you point out that he, of the Beatles, really got what the Monkees were about and likened you to the Marx Brothers.
Yes, well, I think they probably all did because they're smart guys, and they got it. There was others that got it, but you're right. John was the first one I remember. That quote hadn't even occurred to me. He says, "Yeah, the Monkees are like the Marx," and he was absolutely right. Much more like the Marx Brothers than the Beatles.
Oh, sure.
Much more.
The antics of the TV show were all Marx Brothers.
Well, yeah, and it was a little musical theater on television, like a Marx Brothers movie was. But John says, "Hey, Monkey Man, you want to hear what we're working on?" And I'm like, yeah, cool, John. All right, man.
Let me change my clothes real quick.
Yeah. You ain't kidding. And he points up to George. I'll never forget this. He points up to George Martin in the booth, and who's wearing a 3-piece suit in the middle of the day because they had to back then. All the producers and engineers. And he hits the button on a 4-track tape recorder, and I hear the tracks to Good Morning, Good Morning. So naturally, that's burned into my neural pathways forever.
Yeah.
And I sit down and try to make small talk and, just talk about stupid stuff. And then months later, actually, I went back to the States and I was writing and directing an episode of the Monkees. And I said, I want that song in the show. And the producers looked at me like, well, you're nuts. I said, no, we'll just call them. Somebody calls somebody, and Good Morning, Good Morning is in my episode of the Monkees, the actual Beatle version in 60, but it would have been 68, yeah. To my knowledge, one of the first times they ever let one of their pieces of music out until many, many years later.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So I sat around for years and I played it on stage. I would tell the story and then I'd noodle around with it. And then I came up with a version that's a slightly different, version. Actually, I switched the time signatures around, which makes it kind of unique. But,
well, they're each unique, and that's what I really loved about it. And my question was, did you do all the arrangements because they're astonishing?
Not all,
right.
But some. David Harris, who's mentioned there, as producer-arranger, did some of the most astonishing arrangements, especially on some of the songs that I was almost too familiar with, or that...
like I'm a Believer?
Well, no, actually, I came up with that one. That was one sitting around for years and years, doing I'm a Believer, God knows how many billions of times. And at soundcheck, I'd start just doing a country version, I thought love was only true in fairy tales. And I just thought, make a good country tune one day. I played that for David, and he said, cool. And we did the tracks, and then Phil Kagi, incredible guitar player out of Nashville, came up with the Everly Brothers kind of thing. So that was actually one of mine. But another one of the most amazing arrangements, I think, is the Diary, the Bread song, David Gates, which was offered to me. David Gates had offered me that song towards the end of the Monkey thing, and I turned it down. That's one of the should-haves. I turned it down. I didn't think I should be doing a ballad. I don't know what I was smoking or something, but it was like, I look back and about 4 years later, Bread came out with it. And
well, there weren't many solo artists in your genre of music at the time breaking away and doing this kind of ballad. Truth be told.
No, there wasn't, and I don't remember what I did.
Was it Richard Harris that did MacArthur Park?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
And everyone thought he was a lunatic.
Yeah, it's true.
You know.
Yeah. So David came up with that amazing arrangement, The Diary, and also a new arrangement of Randy Skouskit, the song that I wrote about my adventures in England. That was a big hit over there. And Sugar Sugar, the famous Sugar Sugar song and story.
Tell me more about the Randy Skouskit.
Well,
you say it's about your adventures while you were in London.
I was in England.
Yeah. Before we started, I did share with you that I became kind of fascinated with your sojourn to England and then becoming a TV director and also theater. I think in the research it says that you directed a very young Catherine Zeta-Jones.
In Bugsy Malone. Yeah.
Yes.
Wrote the book and directed the musical version of Bugsy Malone. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, you leave the States, the massive popularity as a television star first and then pop star second, and literally create a completely and wholly separate new career and life. And I just, at whatever age I was, tuned into that while all of my peers were like, what happened to we love the Monkees, why would they? You know, that whole issue that people deal with however they deal with their favorite bands breaking up or whatever. And I just zeroed in on this incredible career that you then created in this far-off land. But I haven't heard much about your experience there. You've got a new book out, or it came out, I guess, now a couple of years.
Oh, no, it was a few years
ago.
Yeah, a few years ago.
You must have talked about it in the book. I'm dying to read about it. But what can tell us? So you say this song.
Well, the Randy Skouskit, no, Randy Skouskit actually was about the 60s British experiences when I met the Beatles. And that's actually written after they threw us a party one night. And I'm told I had a great time. And I came back to my hotel room and I wrote a sort of stream of consciousness song about my adventures with the Beatles. And there's other people over there at the time, Mama Cass, and I met my first wife there. And so Randy Skouskit is about that particular period, 68, 69, in England. Right. But the period you're talking about was only like 4 or 5 years later.
That's right.
And yeah, it was, you know, it's kind of a long story, and I'm not sure how interesting it is, but it harks back to, you know, in a way, my early life and career in the business, having grown up in a...
Don't be afraid. Bring that right in here, sir. We have a very special concoction. Why half a glass, by the way?
Thank you.
Keep that standing by.
Sorry.
Nicely done, sir. Nicely done. We've got more where that came from, mister.
But it is interesting in the sense that it is connected to my whole life and the fact that I was born in a showbiz family. Yeah. My father was an actor, my mother was an actor. My first memories were going on a set with my father, watching him get shot in some Howard Hawks movie, and
then child actor.
And then, well, yeah, my first screen test, I was 6. Actually, I have some prenatal work coming out on ultrasound. It's a little kind of...
So it's a vaudeville.
Yeah. A child star at 10, 12. And then wisely, my parents took me out of the business and put me back in school. But I went through that roller coaster ride at 10 years old. Crazy. So after the Monkees, jumping ahead, after the Monkees, I guess I just sort of intuitively knew that I had to look for take another path. My father had always said, you can't wait for the phone to ring, you got to follow the fish. You can't wait for them to follow you. Yeah. So I intuitively just kind of knew, end of series, you know, I'm not going to probably be able to do much for a while. I would go to auditions, interviews after the Monkees, even during, and they would say, "Why are you doing here? We don't need a drummer." You know, I'd be up for a part. But also, I had really become enamored and very interested in production and in behind the scenes. I always had, even as a kid. I was always, you know, when they were setting up the shot, I'd be with the special effects guy, you know, blowing up lizards in the desert or something. It was like, I was always fascinated with the production and the technology of it and the behind the scenes.
And as you also pointed out, you were directing episodes.
And I had started directing on the Monkees,
right.
And I was like, this is really kind of where I want to go.
Right.
I was getting offers to do this and that, but I started a little production company, and I was doing commercials and buying, you know, film equipment and stuff. And actually, I went to England to do a play. It was my first one of my first plays, called The Point.
The Harry Nilsson
musical at the Mermaid Theatre.
Yeah.
For Sir Bernard Miles. And I went to do the play with my good buddy, the late Davy Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And we were just going to go for 3 months, 3 or 4 months. It was over the Christmas period, pantomime season kind of thing.
Right.
But I brought my little reel of film. I had happened, by coincidence really, to have married an English girl. And so I could work there if I wanted. I could stay and work if I wanted. And I brought my little reel, a couple of commercials, the monkey episode. And
your director's reel.
My director's reel. And I bumped into an agent through a friend, and I said, listen, you know, I'm here for 3 or 4 months. You want to flog this stuff around town and see if anybody is interested? And she did. And the BBC hired me. I got a job at the BBC directing drama, a drama play on the BBC, very prestigious series they had on the air at the time.
That had to have been exciting.
That was a real high point in my life.
Yeah.
To really get a shot. And I at that moment, I mean, I was ready to head. I packed for 3 months.
Sure.
And I told my wife at the time, I said, look, I can't miss this opportunity. This is just to get a shot to direct here at the BBC, to get off the monkey train. Not that I ever had a problem with it,
but this was a 45 degree. I mean, this was getting as far away from it as you could.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it, it wasn't an intentional,
right,
through any sort of derision. It wasn't any sort of.
You weren't trying to derail.
No, I wasn't trying. You know, I often explain to people when they ask me, you know, about career and paths, and the way I explain it and look at it is that you work your ass off to get your career going.
Yeah.
You put an enormous amount of time and money, in the case of the Monkees, millions of dollars, and you get this train going, excuse the pun, creating this inertia.
Sure.
You get this sucker going, and it starts going, and you build it up, and you're pushing, and you're shoving, and you're getting it going. And all of a sudden one day it leaves without you. and you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's no prayer
right.
to stop it.
No.
You have very little chance.
Right.
People try. There's some artists who get out in front of that damn train and go, no!
Yeah.
I won't sing those songs. I won't say that line. I won't do that. Don't ever call me that. We know those stories.
Sure.
There's other people that, you know, will try to nudge it, and you can do that. Madonna's a great example of someone who's been able to nudge the train sideways, and there's others, you know, that you push it, you give it a little side force, and so you're not trying to stop it, just call reinventing, you know, a little bit like that. And there's other people that just get off and wave goodbye.
Right.
It's like kind of what I did. I was, bye, monkey train. Okay, have fun. Right if you get work. Okay, bye. And that's what I did through a series of, you know, like I say, good fortune, good luck, and a lot of hard work. And I just knuckled down and did nothing else. There was no interest or demand for me as an actor. I wasn't interested in singing or I just wanted to direct, write, and produce. And that's all I did for just years and years and years. And it was wonderful, you know.
Yeah.
A wonderful experience.
Well, we got to go away to come back. I mean, that's one of the... it was recently shown in the Louis C.K. Television show. He had the great director David Lynch's character who played this. I don't know if you watched Louis' show on FX. Tried to teach him how to be a talk show host, and he just gave him something like, there's 3 rules of show business that I know, and I forget which one of the 3. Maybe it was 2. You got to go away to come back. And of course, it was meant as a little side track on this 3 rules of show business. But it is so fucking true. And the fact of the matter is, when that monkey train gets to the apex, it's worldwide. And not like today worldwide because of your computer. It's enormous, and it's all anyone's going to think about, regardless of what you may want to do with your acting career. You are that. And there's a clear case of you got to go away to come back. And you didn't just wave goodbye to the train. That was the part that I became kind of dialed into and fascinated by, was the invention of a new career. And as you say, you brought your reels along. You know, I often shout atop the mountain for anyone who gives a damn, if you're not creating, you're waiting. So you went over there and said, I'm over here to do this play. I'm having a blast with my friend Davey. I want stories from Nielsen. So doing a stage adaptation of his work must have been a thrill in its own. So that part of the see a train is one thing. But you brought your director's reel with you. That wasn't an accident.
No.
And that, to me, is your ability to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, and fear. Just like, I got to do something now.
Well, hell yeah.
You know, I got to do something. I was, like I said, I was interested in getting into production. I just knew intuitively I wouldn't, I probably wouldn't get those juicy acting roles, even though I was, I was it was down between me and Henry Winkler for the Fonz.
I saw that in the dossier.
It's absolutely true.
Oh my God.
And Henry reminds me of it all the time. And
yes, of course he does.
We laugh about it because he says, I do remember the callbacks, and it was between me and this other guy who now turns out to have been Henry Winkler.
Yeah.
And I was just fresh off the monkey thing, and it was a mid-season replacement, actually, that show.
Oh my.
And so they were desperate to get somebody, you know, pretty fast. And I was back for the final callback. And Henry, he tells the story. He says, I walked in, I saw Micky Dolenz sitting there. I said, oh shit, I'm never going to get this. But thank God he did, because he was a much better Fonz than I would have been. I mean, I was kind of playing at the East Coast, you know, Fonz kind of character. He was just, you know, brilliant in that part. But that's about the only time, and I was up for a couple of other, and I do remember going into some auditions post Monkees, and them saying, "What are you doing here? We don't need a drummer." It's like, oh, God.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, it happens. It's this business. You know, one of the other rules of show business that you were going to mention, one that I always include, is get a good lawyer.
Yeah.
That's a really important one.
Yes.
But you know, it comes down to, like I said, my dad, you know, just said, you got to follow the fish. You can't expect them to follow you. So.
Right. All right. So let's in fact talk about you and Davey go off to England, his homeland, to do your friend Harry Nielsen adaptation of his. So first, let's put a pin in that trip and back it up a little bit to nights in Los Angeles, where you and Harry would go out in the town. Because there's a documentary about his travels in the nights of Los Angeles. You may not remember a lot of those nights. I'm assuming you don't.
Huh?
So what I'm asking really is, could it have possibly been
who are you?
As fantastic as those of us in the?
It's never as fantastic as they say, or as you would like to believe, or as you remember. But it sure does make for great stories. You know, as a generalization, compared to today, it was probably pretty tame.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Compared to today.
But
it was probably pretty tame, but it was crazy. I mean, it was it was crazy. That particular period you're talking about, I'd already known Harry for many, many years. This is the John Lennon Lost Weekend.
Yeah.
You know, Maypang.
Right.
You know, that whole. It was only a couple of years. You know, it seemed like a decade, but it was not that long a period of time. And yeah, it was pretty crazy. Just a bunch of young bucks. You know, just you know, hanging out and.
Looking for trouble.
Huh?
Looking for trouble.
Well, not even trouble, just looking for, you know, other carnal things, but not necessarily trouble. Just you know, what's that song? Looking for some touch. And often just, you know, just sitting and having hours and hours of philosophic conversation.
Sure.
I mean, it was. Harry was brilliant. I mean, Harry was one of the only people that I've ever known in my life that I can categorically say was a genius. In fact, I actually know his IQ was up in the stratosphere, somewhere like that. And John was no slouch either, I mean, in terms of intellect. And so a lot of it came down to, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning, just conversations. But there was also quite a bit of debauchery, of course.
Well, how about the freedom that I would assume you had going out with friends back then, when your friends were and yourself were famous, in a world where not everyone had a video camera on their phone, nor did they have a phone in their fucking pocket, nor was there a TMZ.
Well, there was freedom.
Right.
There is none.
Right.
I mean, it's just black and white. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not degrees of. You know, there was occasionally a still photographer that one would allow
Right.
to take and they were very polite, and they would ask.
But that's the thing.
They were polite, and they would ask
Yeah.
to take a photograph. So there was an enormous amount of freedom, you know, as there was even during the 30s and 40s and 50s, and you know,
60s was the end of it.
The end of the 60s, beginning of the, you know, I think maybe into the 70s, but during that period. People were more polite. They would never have thought of imposing. You know, there was nothing. You know, there were the gossip magazines, and there were the Hedda Hoppers in the
Walter
early days, and there were
Winchell's
and the Rona Barretts and stuff, but nothing like it is. There is none. There is no privacy and freedom. But that's part of the price we pay for this. You know, interconnectivity. You know, that has its positive aspects also. You know, you got to. It's the old story, the good with the bad.
Yeah.
But at that time, yeah, there was, you know, you didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And frankly, what we were doing was just like high school kids.
Right, of course.
Just puking in the streets.
Yeah.
And so, you know, photographer walked by and go, oh, God, not them again. Oh, come on, give me a shot here. Come on, give me a shot.
Well, I imagine the times when you guys would sit around and contemplate the world would probably ultimately be much more fascinating than.
Well, it was the only thing that was really fascinating. The little stories of the episode in the Troubadour, or the episode in this club, or you know, doing, you know, getting on a, you know, making a scene here. That was usually the exception to the rule. I mean, there were those things did happen.
But the only reason they're fascinating is because famous people were involved.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's the same shit
it's
everybody else is doing.
It's a high school kid puking in the parking lot.
Yeah.
If you're John Lennon puking, of course.
Yeah.
But
I
Harry,
think I got some on my shoes. Yeah.
But Harry, like I say, I'd known Harry way before that. He had his first hit record with the Monkees. He was a songwriter.
Yeah.
And he was working at a bank, Security Pacific in Van Nuys. I remember him telling me. We drove by it, you know, after, and when we were hanging out, and he said, "I used to work there," and he was writing songs, and he got him, would send him out to publishers, and one day we were recording Headquarters, a wonderful album that we did as in the Monkees, and publisher comes in, Lester Sill, this wonderful guy comes in, and he says, "I got this young kid has a song or two." Harry sits down at the piano, and I remember, for some reason, I remember this so clearly, sits down at this little piano and plays Cuddly Toy.
Jesus.
And he says, here's a song, we think Davey might like this, and he plays Cuddly Toy. You're not the only cuddly toy. Perfect little vaudevillian.
Jamie's favorite.
No, it's one of my,
You love that song?
my favorite Davey song.
Isn't that a great song? Okay.
It's a fantastic song.
Davey,
and the video is so much fun.
and
The video is fun too,
perfect.
because it's like they're little vaudeville
Well,
costumes.
Davey says, I like that song, I'll do it. Right there, boom, on the day, right there, sitting at the piano.
Something that didn't normally happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll do that song, right, yeah.
I
Okay.
like it.
So Harry tells me, later, months or whenever later, we're talking about it, because then, of course, he got signed and he started writing One Is the Only Number, and he was writing, all these incredible songs for people and himself. And he says when he walked out of the recording studio, the publishers turned to him and says, "You can quit the bank." And of course he did. And I think Harry would have done quite well with or without the Monkees, but it's nice. Anyway, we just, for some reason, we bonded.
Right.
Excuse me, and we just started hanging out. We didn't really work together until many years later. He produced me in a song once, but we just hung out. He would call me up at like noon on a Wednesday and say, "Let's go to Martoni's and have some spaghetti for lunch." And 2 days later, I'd end up in a massage parlor in Phoenix. And that's a very typical, everybody will tell you that, you just got on his train and you couldn't get off.
Right.
It was just emphatic.
Yeah.
And it was almost spiritual. It was just boom. And it wasn't just this debauched
No.
sort of,
Just
like
fascinating.
joke. It was intense. And it was intellectual, and it was ethereal, and it was eclectic, and it was, he just was on a mission, And if you were lucky enough to like be somebody he would even, hang around with,
Right.
and I often wondered, why me? I mean, it's like I always felt like a Wally Cox to his Marlon Brando.
Oh, that's genius. That's genius. Well, let me tell you something. Marlon Brando needs Wally Cox just as much as the other way around.
Well, that
I
may
assure
be true.
you.
And Harry and I were
Clearly.
just became so close for many, many years, and he was just brilliant. And I was there when he wrote The Point.
Yeah.
He would sing him the songs to me. The great story, quickly, just as
Please.
a side story, how he sold that. He found out he wanted to do it as an animated cartoon, as an ABC movie of the week. And they'd not even ever done an animated movie. But he had some heat on him. He had a little traction, from his writing and his stuff. And he was trying to get into ABC to pitch it to the head of development for Movie of the Weeks. Couldn't get a look in. And he finds out that the guy's flying to New York, first class, on this particular day, this particular flight. I can't remember how he found out, but he did. He books the flight, and he gets the next seat to the guy.
See, it's that sort of go-getter attitude.
And he gets on the flight, first class, sits down, plane takes off. He tells me this story. He says, plane took off. He says, "Okay, I'm not here by accident. My name's Harry Nilsson. I've done this song and that song, and by John Lennon. Blah, 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 blah. We got 6 hours. I have a pitch for an animated movie that I want you to do on ABC Movie of the Week. You got anything better to do for 6 hours?" What can the guy say? Shit, no, go for it.
Let's order drinks.
And he had little drawings, Murakami Wolf, like sketches and stuff like that. And
Wow.
Harry pitched them the show, sold it by the time they landed at JFK.
That, ladies and Jews, is how it gets done.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You don't sit idly by. That's genius.
No, and that speaks a little bit to my when I went to England. I've never been able to sit idly by.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly frustrating and irritating and desperate and scary at times, but I've never been able to just sit idly by, and I think that, again, that comes from my parents and their upbringing. Very grounded, very, very down home. We didn't have a showbiz family. We never lived in Beverly Hills, Hollywood, or
Right.
we lived in the valley on a ranch. I was mucking out the horse stable when I came home from filming Circus Boy. If you want a horse, you go out and clean up the shit.
Right.
And But I'm a movie star. I'm Corky. Clean up, shovel the shit, kid. You're going to get spanked.
Yeah, not to mention the title of the show is Circus Boy. Now
right.
Get out there and clean up the shit.
Yeah, so they were very, very down to earth about that.
But that's fortunate for you, needless to say.
Oh, yeah.
However, I also must say that you've got to give yourself some of the credit here to self-start. You know, I don't think enough people realize, especially those who have had success, that it's not a sprint. It is a marathon, and it's not a dress rehearsal. This is it. And I think it was one of the reasons that I became as fascinated as I did about that transition for you. Let's before we get too far away, just talk about that 3 months with you and Davey doing that play. Just that experience alone. I'm sure you've been asked, certainly according to the transcripts I read from worthless Piers Morgan, but you were asked instantly to speak endlessly about your dear friend and cohort. So let me just, if I can, get an insight into those 3 months and what sort of experience that was for you and Davey.
I'm sorry, you mean the 3 months?
Doing the point.
Oh, doing the point.
Yeah.
Oh, well that...
Because as an experience of working on the TV show, you know, one of the things I loved in the research was how you were saying,
gotcha.
You're shooting the show 10, 12, 14 hours a day. You're preparing to go on tour. There's 2 years there before you even know and play your first live show how successful everything was at that point, you know. The fascination I found in just eloquently way you put, you understand, we were a band that just, our first live show was in front of 10,000 people in an arena. We didn't get to start off in small venues where you find your voice and you learn how to work together live on stage. The Beatles got their 10,000 hours in fucking Hamburg. That's where they created that sound. Your first gig is in front of 10,000? That's crazy. So, separate from all that insanity, you and Davey go off to do a play together.
Well, we'd actually done some things before that, so that isn't isolated. The point is not an isolated incident. What happened is, after the Monkees went off the air, the show's canceled, there is no Monkees.
Right.
Many people, even knowledgeable people, don't realize that the Monkees was not a band. It was a television show about a band.
Exactly.
An imaginary band that really didn't exist until we went on the road, and then did it exist?
Yeah.
It's like Pinocchio becoming a real little boy.
Right.
You know, the closest thing that's come along since the Monkees that I think is similar in paradigm is Glee.
Or Spinal Tap.
Well, more Glee, because Glee is a show about a Glee club.
Right.
But it's real. It's not satirical. I mean, Spinal Tap was, of course, one of the greatest movies of all time, but a total send-up.
Yes.
Glee is a show about an imaginary Glee club.
Right.
But they care, and it's real, and they're doing it, and they can act, they can sing, they can dance, they can play, they can
You're right.
perform.
It's a perfect
they go
analogy.
they go on the road. I've heard they've been in concert. The Monkees was that, a show about a band that wanted to be the Beatles.
Exactly.
But never was.
Just a TV show.
On the TV show.
Yeah.
Never was. The struggle for success was what was important as the spine of that show, that narrative. It was these guys sitting in there, and that's what resounded with kids all over the world that were in their basements, in their living rooms, trying to play, trying to get a job. We never got a job.
Right.
We never worked.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, how did we afford this beach house in Malibu? And I still don't know. But nevertheless,
because it was a soundstage in Burbank.
Yes, because it was a soundstage in Burbank. So it was this show about the struggle for success. But anyway, the show goes off the air. There was no more Monkees. There was no more shows. And we toured a little bit and we recorded a little bit, fulfilling some contracts. But then Davey and I, because of our mutual sort of history. He was a child star on Broadway doing Oliver. I'd been on TV. We'd always kind of hit it off. We got married about the same time. We had kids about the same time. We probably hung out together more than any other combination of us, just by that fact alone. just similarity, things in common, stuff like that, singing and dancing and acting. So after the Monkees, one of the first things non-Monkees that happened was that Davy and I went out as a duo, Dolenz and Jones. We went out as, like, you know, Bob Hope and Fred and Bing Crosby,
Right.
and we had a couple of incarnations of that, and then we went out with Boyce and Hart, the guys that wrote and produced the early Monkee songs. And then it was after that that the offer came up for the two of us to go to. Harry knew both of us, and he sat there in my kitchen and said, "You guys want to do The Point in London?" And we're like, "Cool, yeah, absolutely great."
Oh, nice.
And so we did that. And Davy and I were actually supposed to leave England after The Point and open in Reno at Harrah's as an act, as Dolenz and Jones. You know, take that last train to Clarksville and we'll meet you at the station. You can behave. Thank you very much. Try the veal. It's like, it could have got kind of scary.
Yeah.
But a number of different things happened. You know, I got really interested and driven and enamored and excited about this producing and directing thing in England. So that's kind of basically why I ended up staying in England and went on that side of the camera. David stayed and entertained. He kept singing and dancing.
Right. The thing about the television show about a struggling band, like all other bands around the country or groups of friends who want to be a band and have fantasies, that is instantly relatable. You're right. Glee is just a spot-on analogy, comparison. However, or like Glee, I guess now with iTunes, there were a couple of songs, a handful of songs, that were on the charts, surpassing the very bands that the Monkees were wanting to be. In this case, the Beatles or the Stones. And so those songs becoming huge on the charts suggest to the audience, well, this band is now real, and they've got a sound and a song and hits, and they're going to tour forever like the Beatles and the Stones, and this is going to be great. And then the backlash. I remember at the time my friends being caught up in the backlash, and a few of us were like ringing the same thing you just said, which was they were actors. Stop yelling at them because they didn't play their instruments the first season, or however window of time that was. They were actors. They went to auditions as actors. They read parts. And then I read some of the dossier where you were a musician first as a young boy. Your father had you taking Spanish guitar lessons, and so you were dying to learn how to play and interested, and you had these great instructors on set. So knowing that you're committed professionally to it, how does do you guys slough off the backlash when you're in the eye of the hurricane, or does it actually affect you? Because, you know, it's not, at one point it felt like war crimes.
Yeah, I call them the hippoisie.
Yes.
And
Aptly.
back then, it was, you know, heretical.
Yeah.
But now, of course, now that the truth is out,
Right.
the Beach Boys, the Mamas and Papas, the Byrds, all those records were being played by the Wrecking Crew, which is a wonderful documentary you should see if you ever get a chance. In our case, again, we weren't a band. We were this television show about a band, and we had absolutely no control over
anything
musically. We did have some control over the comedy and the set and the scripts and the dialogue, because we were improvising an awful lot. But it came down basically to the fact that, hate to sound, you know, I don't know, when you're that successful, in terms of the backlash, when you're that successful and
rich,
thousands financially successful, and you know, thousands of screaming fans, and they can't all be wrong. You know,
a few of them, but not all.
Despite the praise of the indiscriminate. I mean, you frankly, you just don't give a fuck.
Yeah, that's the answer I was waiting for.
You just, and I
The
still
eye of the
don't.
hurricane is go fuck yourself.
I still don't give a fuck. I've proven myself.
You sure have.
And the songs have.
Yes.
And we have, and others have. You know, there was other people that were like chastised and ripped apart by the hippoisie at the time. Chicago still can't get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because of the hippoisie. At some point, you just say, somebody's wrong.
Yeah.
This is, you know, just
I do.
fuck it.
Yeah.
You know, who cares?
Who cares is the answer.
But having said that, I can understand how there was a real, I don't know, misconception is the right word. It had never happened before, this kind of thing. Now Glee comes on and everybody's, oh yeah, got it, Glee, boom.
Yeah.
We weren't just actors playing parts. The audition process, and this is an important element that needs to be said. The audition process for the Monkees was the most intense I'd ever been through since until I started auditioning for musical theater, where I had to do it, sing it, play it, act it, perform it, dance it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in gym clothes. The screen tests were extensive, went on much longer than any other TV show. Clearly, they were not just looking for actors, or they would have just hired an actor and had somebody fake, like that wonderful movie Sweet and Low Down, which I love, with Sean
but he ain't
clearly he ain't playing. But in Hollywood films, you accept that as a paradigm. You accept that, right? Wonderful movie, but no one expected Sean Penn to play like what's his face.
Yeah.
So clearly the producers at the time, and I've often tried to put myself in their heads, they didn't want just that. They would have just hired actors.
Yeah.
And had somebody do the voice, like in West Side Story, have somebody sing for Natalie Wood. They would have done that. They didn't want that. Because the auditions were extensive. You had to sing, you had to play. My audition piece was Johnny Be Good. You had to act, you had to do improvisation, which I hated.
Really?
Oh, I hated it.
I
was terrible. I'm still not very good at it. But at the time, I was an actor. I mean, I was a performer, a singer, and I had a script in Circus Boy, or in the, you know, and I would learn my lines, and I was encouraged eventually. They gave us improvisation lessons. A wonderful actor, director named Jim Frawley, who had a lot to do with the tone and the sense of the television show. We were doing improv stuff, you know, as soon as they sold the pilot, you know, throwing the imaginary ball around and doing all that improv stuff. So clearly they had in mind, you know, we're hoping, we're hope against hope. We're going to hope, we're going to get these guys together, we're going to create this thing, and they're going to actually go out and play this stuff and do it. And it turned out that we did. It's just barely early on.
It's a masterful plan when you break it down like that, in terms of from a television producer standpoint.
Well, you think about
the world had fallen in love with the Beatles, so you know what that looks like. Let's create a television show. We saw A Hard Day's Night. Let's create a television show that's that. Those 4 guys, and then someone in the meeting said, you know what, it needs to be more relatable. Instead of them being successful, let's make them a struggling.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Now, that's the mistake that every show has made, and I've been asked to consult on a half a dozen over the last 15, 20 years. Every single time a producer comes to me, some big ones at times, and said, we want to redo the Monkees.
Right.
They always make the same mistake. They cast 4 really great-looking people who are already successful. That's the end of the show.
Yeah.
And I try to tell them, no, it doesn't. That's not what. We were not 4 great. Well, Davey was pretty cute, but hey, I am not. You know.
I beg to differ,
Patterson.
sir. I beg to differ.
They missed that.
Is there any way, if those of you at home, oh my, that's a cute son of a bitch right there. Look at that Jew fro you rented.
They got it right. They understood that. You know, they went for personality. They, in a way, like the old Hollywood studio system, they went for the personalities. And thank God They chose me as one of them. They went for the interaction, the personalities.
Chemistry.
And the chemistry between the characters. And much to their credit. And yeah, you're right, absolutely. Somewhere, someone along the line said, this has to be a struggle for success, or there's no meat, there's no meat and potatoes. It's like, you know, it'll be over before it starts.
Right.
Another interesting thing that people miss is that the humor was not satirical,
It was silly.
nor topical.
It was silly.
It was silly, Marx Brothers,
Yeah.
timeless. Whereas a show like Laugh-In, which is a great show, I loved Laugh-In, I loved watching Laugh-In. But if you hadn't read the newspaper that week, you wouldn't get the references. It would be impossible. And there was very, very few, if any, satirical or topical references in the Monkey Show. So that stands up. But you think about the people that put this together, and it's not as big a mystery. First of all, you got Bob Rafelson, who turned into one of the great directors of all time. You got Bob Rafelson, who created the show before the Beatles.
Really?
It was a folk group.
Holy shit.
That's a whole other story if
Yes,
you want.
please.
Now?
Yes, please. Well,
Okay.
right after you get done with this.
Well, okay,
Because I want to talk
then
about
I'll
him.
digress.
I want to talk about him also with Head and all that
Yeah,
experience.
well, there. So Bob Rafelson, very incredible director, writer.
5 Easy Pieces.
Bert Schneider, astute businessman whose father is Abe Schneider, the head of Columbia Pictures.
Hello.
Then there's Paul
Kirshner?
Mazursky,
Oh,
who
my.
writes the pilot.
What?
Paul Mazursky wrote the pilot,
I didn't know that.
and with his partner Larry, Paul Mazursky and Larry Tucker at the time. They're in the pilot. Paul Mazursky writes the pilot of the Monkees. Larry Gardner and Dee Caruso, two incredible story writers at the time, work on the spine and the theme of the show. They hire the hot, crazy, wacko television writers of the time. That's the TV side of the equation. They hired Jim Frawley, who was just out of Second City with Mike Nichols and Elaine May, who won an Emmy for Ally McBeal for the pilot years later. He is the one that's teaching us improv and then goes on to direct all the episodes.
Alan Arkin was here a couple of weeks ago, and I think he spoke about Frawley.
He might have,
Yeah.
because he's brilliant.
They all started out
very,
together.
very great director. Then you have the songwriters, part of the Brill Building, the Screen Gems publishing,
Neil
Brill Building.
Diamond.
Neil Diamond, Carole King
Carole
and Jerry Goffin,
King.
Boyce and Hart, David Gates, Paul Williams, Harry Nielsen, Neil Sedaka, Carol Bayer Sager, Diane Hildebrand. So
Couldn't get anyone.
yeah, couldn't get anyone. So, there's no guarantee, but they put together, by hit or miss and by good fortune and good chance, it was a coming together of the forces. And the way I always like to describe it is that the whole became greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
And there's no one thing, one person, one actor, one director, one producer, that is responsible for that. It never is.
No.
You look at Star Trek,
Uh-huh.
right?
No, it's the
Was it William Shatner?
It's the chemistry.
Was it
It's the whole.
Gene Roddenberry? Was it Leonard Nimoy? Was it the writer? Was it the art direction? What? No. At a certain point, something ignites,
Yeah.
like a fusion reaction, and it just becomes greater than the sum of its parts, and you may never know
We have
why.
a liftoff.
But you have liftoff, and you just go, "Oh my God, hallelujah!"
Right. I mean, you're
Go,
upping,
Mama!
You're upping your odds when you, in fact, amass a team like that.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
There's no formulas in this business, but what you can do
Is get the
is
best.
surround yourself with the best,
Yeah.
and that's what I try to do all the time. You can't guarantee anything, but you surround yourself with people of like mind,
Yeah.
and that are talented. You can tell. You listen, you hear, you watch, and stuff like that. There's nothing you can't guarantee it. That just does not work.
Yeah.
But you can sometimes avoid mistakes,
Yeah.
or avoid errors along the way. But there's no formula. If there was a formula, there'd never be a flop.
Right. Yeah.
And God knows we've all had the flop there. Right?
Rafelson, with a screenplay co-written by the Jack Nicholson. One of the most bizarre film trips ever is a film called Head. A little bit, if you don't mind, from that experience.
Absolutely. That was one of the high points, certainly in my career. As an actor, I mean, I think I did some of my best work in that film. Just as a flat-out actor, Bob Rafelson got some really interesting performances out of all of us. It's, yeah, as you say, a very strange movie. I think...
of its time, it was not as strange, I imagine, to the people of like-minded looking for that experience.
Well, at the time, nobody saw it.
That's what I meant, the three people.
The three people
Yeah.
that saw it loved it. At the time, our fans, some of them couldn't get in because it had been rated, you know, because some of the scenes, and it was certainly not your typical Monkey episode, but that was intentional. I remember when
Clearly.
when they came to me, I can't speak for anybody else, but they said, we want to make a movie. Bob said, we want to make a movie. And, but we don't want to necessarily make it a 90-minute episode of the Monkees. We can spread our wings a little bit here, and I was for it. And that's when he introduced us to this B-movie actor who was, you know, a guy named Jack Nicholson,
Right.
and who wanted to be a writer. And he was, and still is, the most incredible, charismatic, wonderful, funny, great guy in the world. Yeah. And he came on the set and then came to our houses, and for months just hung out. I mean, just literally was just one of the gang for months and months. Yeah. And we were talking, and we ended up going to Ojai, the Inn and Spa, right? On a weekend, the four of us, Jack, Bob, Bert, and a couple of, you know, assistants, and I have film of this. I actually got 60 millimeter film of this. And we sat around a little tape recorder sitting in the middle of a hotel room, just talking, just bullshitting and, you know, smoking and hanging and drinking about what we wanted to do as a movie and what we didn't want to do. And out of that, out of those tapes, out of those conversations, Jack went away and just crafted this, like, this brilliant crystallization of the zeitgeist of that time. To me, that movie, even though I'm in it and I love it, but even if I wasn't, I would think
It captured.
it captured that moment better than almost any other movie of its time. And I don't exactly know why,
Well,
but I
it's,
think
it's
that
pure.
it's pure, but it also doesn't rely on the cliches of the time. You never see hippies driving around in a flowered bus going, "Whoa, man, fire fucking hell!"
Right. Nor is it ladled with a linear story.
Nor was it linear. But having said that, you know, and I've talked about this a lot over the years, and you know, this is a lot of people's very favorite films, Quentin Tarantino for starters.
Wow.
And it had more to do than the Monkees. It had more to do than just the deconstruction of the Monkees. Because if you remember the movie, there was this deconstruction sort of attitude about it. Hey, we are the Monkees. It was the deconstruction of the Hollywood studio system. Because if you remember, Bob and Bert took basically the money from the Monkees and their cachet from that and made Easy Rider.
Right.
And that's not a coincidence. I mean, that was part of their plan to buck up against the Hollywood studio system, which at the time was insurmountable. You couldn't get a film properly made or distributed unless you were part of the Hollywood studio system. Well, Bob Rafelson and Bert and Jack, Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, Martin Scorsese. There's a wonderful book, Easy Rider, Raging Bulls.
Love it to death.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they interviewed me for that, and that movie Head is about that moment in time.
Yeah.
When they said, "No, we can do this. We're going to kick your ass." For $250,000, they made Easy Rider.
Will blow your mind.
And we're going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
And everything changed after that.
Absolutely.
And Head was a little bit of a precursor to that. And the movie was about, to some degree, how they were going to do that. Because there's a wonderful scene in the movie which basically, for me, kind of sets, you know, is the motif of the movie. There's a scene where it's a cavalry western scene, I'm in total cavalry thing. Mike is there. I remember Terry Garr, one of her first parts, was sitting there, is wounded with an arrow in her shoulder. Suck the blood before it turns to poison or something. And I'm sitting there, and there's Indians flying around and arrows and stuff. Typical Western Hollywood scene. And I get hit with like 5 special effects arrows, like, and I look down and I go, oh, fuck. I didn't say fuck, but, oh, shit. Bob, I'm fed up with this shit. I don't want to do this stuff anymore. I'm out of here. And I turn around and I walk through the backdrop, which is the painted desert. And I rip open the backdrop and I walk through and I destroy the Hollywood myth. I destroy the symbolically, metaphorically.
Right.
And that's kind of what I think the movie was about, was the metaphorical deconstruction of that Hollywood studio system. Victor Mature as the old Hollywood system, the Monkees as dandruff, an irritant in his hair, you know, crawling around. And
no, there was an effort to be subversive in the writing and the execution, without question. Which is why it was, I'm great to know, exciting to be a part of. You know, it wasn't just about let's fuck with the Monkees' stature. It was about capturing the moment in time, the zeitgeist, as you said.
Yeah, and what they felt about it, Bob and Bert and Jack, I don't know. You know, you'd have to ask them how they felt about the whole monkey thing. I know, and I can say this in all fairness and honesty, I don't think Bert Schneider was lived an entirely happy life, you know, about all that necessarily.
Yeah.
It became bigger than all of us, you know. It took on a life of its own, and you'd have to ask Bob. And the other guys too, by the way. You know, David, I know has had at times have at times different, you know, feelings about it. Mike and Peter too. You know, it was, and it was tough at times. You know, it was tough at times to deal with some of that backlash that you were talking about, because you're so successful, you have so much love, you have so much adoration, and yet you have some people that basically just didn't get it.
That's just it, though.
That was so frustrating.
Yeah.
The Beatles got it.
Yeah.
That was, thank God, you know, that they did. Frank Zappa, who I loved and huge fan, got it. And over the years, you know, other people have said, you know, I was a closet Monkey fan.
Yeah.
I got it.
Well, there was
I couldn't tell anybody at the time.
I knew what you were doing, man.
Hey.
You were winking at me.
Yeah.
I was watching.
Couldn't tell anybody, but it was.
Yeah. Well, there became a line in the sand. Speaking of which, Jamie and I, and our friend Elaine Ewing, who's our social maven and out there to say hello, and our creative consultant, former original director of the show. The four of us are going to go see the show on November 10th at the Greek Theater. Am I correct? This is the first show that Mike has done in a crazy amount of years with you?
No, not the first. The first time that he joined us officially was in '86 or '7, just a couple of shows at the Greek, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
But then in '97, on his bat, he said, let's get together and record a new album.
Right.
Which we did, called Justice, a lovely album. Excuse me. And we went to England and did, 10, 12 big shows in England, just the four of us as a band, promoting that album. And then, but now, since then, this is the first time, you know. But Mike hasn't toured at all with anybody,
right.
You know, even himself. You know.
So when you went up to his place, as I read about, to rehearse, and because he hadn't done any of these songs in such a long time, what was that like?
I had to teach him the chords to his songs. Well, not quite. I mean, but yeah, he was, you know, he hadn't sung that stuff in years, and it was amazing. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. I mean, I always loved his material, and in a way, his material, the Mike Nesmith songs, were to some degree it's so hard to explain because there's this MONKEES, which are wonderful songs written by Boyce and Hart and Carole King and these incredible writers, and produced well, and I sang pretty good, and you know, and wonderful material that I sing to this day. But then behind the scenes, there's this undercurrent of mainly Mike, you know, frustrated.
Sure, he saw this as an opportunity to be a singer-songwriter.
Well, he'd been told.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. Of course he had.
Promised.
Well, of course. I mean, they'd gone and seen him. He was he was running the hoots at the Troubadour, and he was singing his songs, and they came up and said, "Oh my God, you're wonderful. We love you. We love your songs.
Please be.
Sign here."
Wow.
And then the way he tells the story, and he should tell it in person, but I'll try to translate. He said well, the best story he's told me is that when it came down to start recording and getting the music together after they sold the pilot,
right,
he brought in a few of his songs that they'd heard and
loved,
but Donnie Kirshner by then was in the mix, and RCA Victor and NBC and blah blah. And basically the way he tells it is they said, no, this is not monkey music.
Oh my God. How dare you, Mike Nesmith?
He's like, what? Yeah, well, just don't worry about it. Just, you know, this is fine, but this is not monkey music. And so, can you imagine? I mean, he.
That's why I'm here, he thought.
That's why I'm here. That's part of why you, hello?
Yeah.
So he takes one of the songs that they turned down that said, no, this is not monkey music. This is not good. This will never be a hit. And he goes to this young girl singer kicking around Los Angeles at the time named Linda Ronstadt. Mm-hmm. And she had a group called the Stone Ponies.
Sure did.
And he says, I got a song for you, and it's called Different Drum.
Yeah. Amazing.
So, you know, it got crazy. It got just, and I think it overwhelmed everybody. Everybody lost a little bit, a lot of control maybe.
Yeah.
Because when you have something that starts generating that kind of revenue and creates that kind of inertia, then suddenly, you know, gets a little bit out of your hands.
Yeah. Well, also to the television genius behind the creation, they couldn't possibly know the monster they'd actually created in terms of the talent that they went out and found.
Well, you never know until after the fact. I mean, I don't think until the 80s I realized, you know, I don't think they did either.
Right.
Because the real impact on the cultural landscape of any show or movie doesn't happen until...
Not in real time.
Not in real time. Yeah. Very seldom. And if it does happen real time, might not last. You know, there's that thing about longevity and proof in the pudding and the legs of something.
Yeah.
Harry Nilsson was always big about that, the legs of something. You can get a overnight thing like
Citizen Kane and
throw a lot of money at something.
Yeah. So sorry, no, to interrupt, but Citizen Kane and It's a Wonderful Life both are perfect examples of in real time no one gave a shit.
No.
Yeah.
And many other shows and many other movies and many other records and many other things because you don't know at the time. You do your best and you hope. It wasn't until I came back in the 80s for the first reunion.
Well, let's talk about that just for a second. You, as I mentioned about the, give me your mug there, mister. Your brilliant reinvention as a director and producer of television and the London stage, which I can't wait to read about in I'm a Believer. I don't know how and why I missed this damn book, you son of a bitch.
It's my unauthorized autobiography.
Is it now? You were actually pursuing studies of physics at university and living in England when MTV decided to run the series.
Yeah.
Right?
How'd you know that?
See, there's my favorite moment in the show when the guest finally says, How did you know that?
I tried to keep that a secret for years and years, and it didn't work.
Well, that's pretty fantastic, though, honestly. So I don't know. In a weird way, it was almost when I was going through the research, it almost became the ultimate moment in time of you have to really let go and go away to come back, because you had not just reinvented yourself creatively as an artist. You actually were in the throes of a pursuit of higher learning.
Well, it didn't start there. I have always been a geek.
For sure.
Terrible geek. I mean, since I was a child. I was taking electronics, I was building Heath kits. During Circus Boy, I was had a workshop. My father was quite handy with electrics and stuff. So it comes from early childhood. In junior high and high school, my shop classes were electronics and metal shop, and I just, for some reason, probably because of my father mainly.
You took a liking to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was always fascinated, and then I just became a geek. And you know, after high school, my first, actually the first and only career choice that I made, because the Circus Boy and the acting thing wasn't a career choice.
Right.
I was following in my father's footsteps.
Right.
It was Dolenz and Sons.
Right, sure,
You know, being an actor.
Yeah.
I had never had that burning, I want to be a star. I want to be on Broadway. No, it's
What
like
you
that's what my dad does, and
Right.
so I'm going to do it too. But after wisely, my parents, like I mentioned, they took me out of showbiz. Smart thing to do. And after high school, my friend and I thought, what are we going to do, you know, for a life? And he suggested, he said, let's be architects and start a building. And I loved architecture. I loved science. I loved geometry. I loved math. I loved all that. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
And after high school, we both joined LA Trade Tech down here, not far from here, actually. And I was about a year and a half or 2 years into architecture when the Monkee audition came along. I'd been doing a little TV work, you know, as a day job.
Sure.
During the summer, you know, Mr. Novak, Peyton Place, long before your time.
No. Not that long.
But my plan was I was going to be an architect, and if I couldn't make it as an architect, I'd fall back on show business.
That's brilliant.
That was my plan. And I was studying every day, and you know, no CAD back then, you little whippersnappers. There was drawing with little pencils and lines. And
Yeah.
I was going to be an architect, and along came the Monkee audition. But you know, it's interesting. A side note that at that season, that television season, 1965. I was up for at least 3 other shows that were music oriented.
Really?
Because the entire industry was trying to capitalize on the whole pop music thing.
Right.
Because at, you know, tail end of the 50s, the Elvis Presley, the anti kind of, you know, rock and roll thing had become passé. Now it was pop music. Now it was Beach Boys. It was Letterman. It was music, and pop music was huge. This even before the Beatles.
Sure.
Folk music, Peter, Paul and Mary, and all that, Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan and all that had become huge. And so the television and the film industries were not negligent of that fact, and they were like trying to capitalize on this. And so that year, I remember distinctly, there was one show about a Peter, Paul and Mary group, and I can't for the life remember the name, but something like the Underdowners or the other. It actually piloted, but it didn't go to series. 3 folk group people. I was up for that. Another one about a surf group called Sand Buddies or something.
We can't use the Beach Boys. We'll use the Sand Buddies.
Yeah,
and it'll be. Can't use Peter, Paul, and Mary. It'll be Steve, Carl, and Mary.
Steve, Carl, yeah. There was a Beach Boy thing. There was a New Christian Minstrel, The Mighty Wind kind of thing.
Wow.
With a big, which eventually I think became Partridge Family.
Sure.
That kind of thing. And I was up for all of them.
Yeah.
And the Monkees. But I remember distinctly going to the Monkee interview for the first time, the first Monkee audition, in the same building, maybe the same office, I went for the Circus Boy audition.
Jesus.
On Gower at Columbia Studios. And I walk in, and there's two guys that are in jeans and T-shirts, and I think that they're there for the audition. Those are the producers.
Oh, boy.
That's Bob and Bert.
Wow.
They're only a few years older than I am,
Right.
which was unheard of at the time for a television producer to be
That young.
that young. You were 50, 60-year-old guys. And the other shows that were being attempted were being done by guys in suits in the ivory tower with cigars going, let's do a show the kids will like.
Yeah, that's
But
it.
Bob and Bert were kids. They were huge Beatle fans. Huge. And that, I think, has a little bit to do with why it was successful, but I now entirely forget your question.
No, we talked about the architecture, which led to
Oh,
later when you decided
the
to go back and
architecture-
study physics.
Yeah, well, so I was always a geek, and even during the Monkees, and I don't, there was no Facebook at the time, of course, and I wouldn't have done it anyway. But even during the Monkees, I mean, I would go home after filming, and I would build an oscilloscope.
Nice.
Or I'd go home and look in my microscope. I had the first laser on the West Coast. I had the first hologram. I remember, Tom Cruise told me never to name drop, but I showed John Lennon his first laser and Moog synthesizer. I had the first Moog synthesizer.
I read that.
Yeah, I had the first Moog. I was always, and to this day, I am.
You sold it to Bobby Sherman.
I sold it to Bobby Sherman.
According to the dossier, you sold Moog synthesizer to Bobby Sherman.
And I hope he's kept it and treasured it. Yeah, eventually I sold it. So I always was interested
Sure.
in the areas of science and electronics and sound and vision and blah blah whatever. Always. I mean, during the Monkees, on the weekend, I built a gyrocopter in my den.
For shits and giggles.
Yeah, for shits and giggles, and flew it.
Yeah.
And then I was a hang glider pilot for years and years until I broke my arm in 3 places. And Palmdale, Santa Monica, and I was and to this day in fabrication, I have a machine shop at home right now.
Yeah.
I have one patent, and I'm working on another.
So this is lifelong.
Oh yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
So in 1985 or 86, when you were studying physics, I didn't mean to suggest that it was a fluke or a harebrained idea, but
no.
And in fact, we've now learned that it was a lifelong fascination.
And I'm still studying it.
Right, clearly. So to be in the middle of that, nonetheless, and the phone rings, and I mean, was it a trickling effect? Was it literally a phone call that said, holy shit, MTV is doing this thing and the thing's exploded again, so we think maybe it's time for a tour?
Well, I don't know what was happening over here in the States because I was unaware.
Right.
But I can tell you, from my perspective, what happened was a producer tracked me down because there was no monkey business. There was no monkey office.
Well, don't easy now. There's always been monkey business, sir.
Well, there was no office. There was no management.
Right.
After the show went off the air.
You mean to say, as it states here on the back of this album, I could not write to the Monkees, care of Screen Gems?
No, that's now a Jack in the Box at the corner of
North Beechwood Drive.
It's a Jack in the Box at the You might get a nice set of fries, but you ain't gonna get nothing else. No.
Yeah, okay. I could write to the Monkees, care of the fries.
So that actually is an important point about it, is that unlike the Beatles, which always had Apple,
Right.
or the Stones, which
Well, this
had,
television show had ended.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And after the show ended, the production company dissolved, and unlike the Stones or the Beatles, there was not an entity
To maintain.
that was maintaining the franchise, and never has been.
Wow.
Never
Wow.
has been since. It's been handed off, mainly the mechanicals for the songs.
Right.
The television shows are separate from the songs.
Sure.
Sony TV has national distribution, but doesn't even have the DVDs. That's Rhino, which is part of WEA, so there's no monkey business in that sense, and never was. So in '86, somebody calls me up and says, you know, it's 20 years later. I think it might be a time for a tour. Are you interested? I was producing, directing a television show at the time, and I said, no, I'm busy. But
and studying physics.
And studying physics. You know, and I'm trying to like solve, you know,
Don't
fusion.
you understand?
This is important, you know. I'm going to solve the energy problems of the world here, you know. But he actually flew out to England and met me, and then he found Peter and Davey. He found Mike, but Mike said no. And independently, we all said, yeah, okay, well, you know, I was two minds about it. My wife and I at the time, and we had 3 small children, and he said, you know, it'd be fun. We'll go out for the summer and have a great little, you know, fairs and parks and amusement parks, and
sure.
you know, be fun. And so we said, yeah, what the hell? So I actually put one of the series I had on hiatus for a while, and I told my bosses and producers, I'm going to do 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you know, in the summer. I need a break. I've been working pretty flat out for like, you know, years, actually.
Yeah.
Well, 3 years later, I'm still on the road. Take the last train to Clarksville, and I'll meet you at... I was still on the road.
Right.
And it turned into the biggest tour of the year.
That was then. This is now reached number 20 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Yeah.
At the time.
That was it was a new record.
A new record.
It was a huge tour, and went on for like 2-3 years. Just didn't stop.
Yeah.
You know, I moved back to the States eventually, and about every 10 years, it seems to come in like locust.
Waves.
Yeah, it's just locust.
As foretold.
Is like 13, isn't it? Or no, 26. What?
Whatever it
locust is something.
Yeah.
So monkeys, locust. It seems to come in these like
it's in the chain.
About 10-year kind of cycles.
And like a plague, you will be back at the, back at the Greek Theater on November 10th.
Yes, like a plague.
We couldn't be more excited. Did you, Jamal?
Yeah.
Okay, you did. Thank you. I'm going to, as I mentioned to you at the outset, we'd like to invite the audience in. And as we hit the 90-minute mark, I'm going to offer up this run of questions for you. One of the ways we ask the audience to participate is we put together a what would you call it? A gag, a bit called Tweet 5.
T5, T5, T5 forever now.
That's Dave Keckner letting us know that it's Tweet 5 time. The T5 is a series of 5 questions that are Coke or Pepsi, this or that, no correct answer, more opinion questions that are designed specifically for you by your fan. And I will offer them up in sort of rapid fire form, one after another. There'll be 5 questions.
Is this going to be embarrassing?
It better not be. This one is written to you from Lady Diode, at Lady Diode on the Twitter. Original fan, I guess we would call her. Been with us from the beginning. And you'll tell by the first of the 5 questions that these were designed for you because it asks the question, voice or heart. Now, it's a Sophie's choice. Don't get me wrong. If you're to choose between voice or heart, your answer would be?
Well, choose for what?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that good enough?
That's the perfect answer.
Okay.
And now she's listing 2 types of symbols, makers of symbols.
Oh, okay.
Zildjian, Zabian. Is that, am I pronouncing these anywhere near correctly?
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
You are.
Do you have a choice?
Zildjian.
Of course. That's the correct answer, by the way. Going down or daily, nightly?
Whoa!
Right? That's a hard one.
God, that is tough.
Sophie's choice. Designed for you.
Yes. Wow. Well, given I've done going down, I have to, you know, extrapolate on this a bit.
Please, please.
Going Down, I have performed now many, many times, and it's one of my favorite songs to perform on stage. But Daily Nightly, I have not until the new current tour.
Really?
Well, because Mike.
Yeah.
So it's got to be daily nightly.
We're going to see Daily Nightly?
We're not only going to see it, we're going to hear it, and there's going to be a huge surprise.
Ooh, doggies. Little teaser for this current tour.
Answers and no questions.
Yeah, baby. Oh, okay. Number 4. Frank Zappa or Jack Nicholson?
Ooh,
It's not even,
that's not fair.
No.
Come on.
That's a no-lose.
No,
You can't lose.
That's not the same.
Correct answer is both.
The correct answer is both.
Or
yes, of
either.
course.
I believe
Or
the correct answer is
either both. You
Yeah.
know. Give me at least the same genre.
I was a sickly devoted Zappa fan as a young lad, and I saw him live once, and later found out he had acquired a PhD in jazz.
Oh yeah.
And he sat on a stool in the middle of that show and did a jazz guitar solo for 20 minutes, and it was heaven on earth.
Okay, little Zappa story for you.
Please, bring it!
Some of you may not believe this. But it's true. Supernatural, perhaps.
Halloween.
Baloney, perhaps not. About a year after the show went off the air, or maybe less even, we were still under contract to Screen Gems Music, to Cold Gems for the recording. And David and Mike and I were still recording. Peter, I think he'd left the group. Frank Zappa lived down the street from me, and he'd been on the show. He was a huge fan. Mike had him on the show, and he was in the movie Head, as you may remember. Well, he lived down the street from me in Laurel Canyon. And we hung out, we'd, go back and forth, go to parties. Excuse me, I get a call from Frank Zappa one day. Frank, hey, what's happening? Hey, Mickey, how you doing? Okay. Mickey, I just wondered, I know the Monkey Show went off the air and stuff. I'd like you to be the drummer for the Mothers of Invention.
Shut the fuck up.
Okay.
Wait, I was kidding. That's a colloquialism. I didn't actually mean you should. How would you like to be the drummer for the Mothers of Invention?
I want you to be the drummer for the Mothers of Invention. My first reaction was exactly the same. Shut the fuck up!
You
First
invented
of all,
that slogan.
My first thought was, I can't cut that fucking shit. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
But I thought, oh my God, this is, talk about a redirection, talk about getting off the monkey train. And I'd been studying hard,
Yeah, you have.
I had been working hard with a number of teachers, Hal Blaine and Earl Palmer, and I was getting pretty good. I am pretty good, but for what I do, for that genre and stuff. And I said, well.
But you learned it in that 2-year period.
Well, 2 or 3 years. But
okay,
between the pilot and, it was about 3 years, But I did know music. I had played classical guitar, so I could read music. So
you could read
I wasn't
music.
starting from scratch.
Absolutely
but still, there's a lot of physicality involved that just takes time. And I said, Jesus. And he said, okay, but here's the deal. You have to get out of your record contract because, you have to record with us.
Sure.
And we're with, I can't remember the label, but you'd have to be able to get out of your record deal with the Monkees. And I called the record company and I said, Frank Zappa's asked me to be the drummer for the Mothers of Invention, but I got to get out of my contract. And they said, fuck you.
Yeah, of course.
There's no way.
Of course they did.
They were still selling, millions of. Little side Frank Zappa story.
Holy shit. Oh, man. I love me some music history. That is fantastic. And you guys were friends and you were hanging out, and he was a fan. Were you also a fan of his at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because, we all were, and Mike especially.
Right.
Because we got his anti,
Yeah.
him going like this to the this. He had this, he was so smart.
Crazy smart.
Crazy smart. And he got the whole, bullshit of the hippoisie.
Yeah, yeah.
Even then, and today, he would get, the bullshit of the hippoisie. And they're still out there. They're amongst us.
Yes.
They walk amongst us.
This fourth question, boy, this really is a fan. The Fonz or the Riddler?
Oh.
Another little known fact. This is
to play.
This is part of your, well, yeah, there again, there's no qualifier with the question. It's just the Fonz or the Riddler. You were...
I was up for the Fonz.
At one point in Tim Burton's radar to play the Riddler.
That's what they say. I never had an audition,
right?
To be honest. I never was interviewed for that, but I did hear that that was a possibility. I got to say the Riddler, you know, but also because there's no one that could ever be the Fonz but Henry. But I would have loved to attempted the Riddler, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I do at home occasionally with my wife.
We actually have a clip of that I would now like to show. Run the clip. Nope,
what?
Nope, we don't. No. Ray Burt or Rhino is the last question. Ray Burt or Rhino?
Well, that's not a question.
Nope.
Ray Burt was the original name of the production company that produced the Monkees. And Rhino is the record company that currently has the catalog.
Right.
So it's not really a question. Rhino's doing a wonderful job right now, I think. They're behind the project. They're supporting it. They, you know, the quality of their merchandise and the quality of their reissues is really, really good.
Yeah. Our friend, stand-up comedian Mark Pitta, opened for you guys at the Northern California. There's a wonderful venue, one of Bill Graham's old venues. Oh no, Saratoga. Let's see here. Here it is, Saratoga Mountain Winery, open for the Monkees.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And always wondered why they didn't finish that tour. It was 2 months later that Davey passed. Did Davey know he was ill? So Mark Pitta wanted some insights.
Boy, I wish I knew.
Yeah, right?
I wish I knew. Yeah, we finished that tour, and we were talking about touring, you know, further.
Sure.
And the end of the year, Christmas, the holidays, and everything was sort of, you know, wound down.
Yeah.
And the agents were going, "Do you guys want to go on? Do you want to do more? You want to do this and that?" And you know, all of a sudden February rolls around, and David passes. And we'd been talking even before that about this headquarters tour that we're doing now. We're calling it the headquarters tour because we're going to focus on this album that we did called Headquarters, which was kind of our, you know, breakaway. Well,
from the machine.
Breakaway from the machine. It was when Pinocchio became the little boy, and it was suggested. I remember to me back at the end of the last tour, a lot of bands are doing that, doing a whole album in its entirety from top to bottom, the start to finish.
Peter Gabriel, the Hollywood Bowl,
the whole thing.
Doing the show.
And that would sound like a great idea. And so we were going to do a few pre-headquarters tunes, and then headquarters, and then post-headquarters stuff. And I thought it was a great idea. And we were just chatting and talking, and Mike was involved. Mike had been approached, and he was like, "Hey, that's not. I kind of like that idea." And of course, then the tragedy of David's passing, and everything kind of went, you know, obviously stopped at that point. And we were here in LA at a memorial for David, and Mike and Peter and I were here, and we started talking, and it started as a conversation about having a memorial concert. Let's have a memorial concert at the Greek or whatever.
Sure.
But then it was like, well, we can't have one because he had family and friends in New York, he had family and friends in England, it was all over the place. So we'll do 3 or 4 memorial concerts. And that is what snowballed into this particular tour. It's not billed as the
Memorial.
Davy Jones Memorial Tour, because that's kind of creepy.
But of course you will.
But there's going to be an amazing tribute and homage that is, I think, going to please and surprise everybody.
I'm sure. Well, that must have been rewarding, but also possibly cathartic, putting that together for
It has been. It's been weird.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's been weird, you know. I mean, the 3 of us rehearsing and singing stuff, you know, looking over your shoulder all the time.
Yeah.
Where's the little cowboy?
Where's that little son of a
Where's
bitch?
Where's that little guy? Yeah, it's been weird, but life goes on, you know, and contrary to the stupid, you know, blogging and stuff that goes around.
Sure.
There's no plans to replace him.
Good for you. Why would you, and how could you?
Well, you couldn't.
It's ridiculous to suggest it.
It's ridiculous.
But a wonderful idea, but or is it absolutely necessary for you guys as artists, beyond wonderful idea, for the fans, necessary for you as artists to make him a part of the show?
Oh, he is.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Oh, he is going to be a part of the show.
Yeah.
And not a hologram.
Thank you. Thank you for not doing that.
Not a hologram.
Although we do have Tupac
yeah.
that we can cut to at any moment.
No, not a hologram. Oh, but absolutely a part, yeah.
By the way, the hologram we made of Tupac is him lying in a coffin. Strange choice, but he's not
cool.
dancing or singing.
That's cool.
He's lying in a coffin.
I like that.
As I want to remember him. Wait, that's too much. Okay. I want to hear a little bit about the Broadway musical stuff, because it has been a part of your life this whole time, that you've been doing shows, whether as a director or a participant. We spoke about the point. Elton John's Aida, how did that start up? This is prior, obviously, to Hairspray. You did the UK tour of Hairspray as well. So give me a little bit of the Elton John Aida experience, because that sounds amazing.
Well, it was amazing. But let me go, if you don't mind.
Please.
Let me go back just a little bit further back. Even as a child, I was fascinated by musicals. But in Los Angeles here, the only way I could watch them, my sister and I actually would watch Oklahoma and West Side Story, and we were just blown away. And my father, being a singer and an actor, he would do musicals, and my mom was a singer and an actress, so they would be wandering around the house singing the current, you know, musical theater stuff of the time. And I remember, and I've even mentioned this in liner notes, my father would wander around the living room in his underwear going, "Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger." And I'm like, "Dad, fuck, I'm trying to watch Superman. Give me a break."
And/or put on some pants.
Yeah, Jesus, that is so gross. Maybe he was going to audition for, you know, some theater production. So I was always fascinated, and I loved it, and I love it. My sister and I watched West Side Story in Oklahoma 1 billion times, but I didn't know how to do it or get into it. And then all of a sudden the Monkees comes along.
Sure.
And in retrospect, of course, it is a little musical theater on television. It's like an old Marx Brothers, half-hour Marx Brothers.
Absolutely.
A little comedy, a little singing, a little dancing, a little shtick.
And reinventing that wheel a little bit, too.
Yeah, a little bit,
was
absolutely,
great.
and doing it on TV.
Right.
Well, after the Monkees, I had an offer to do a couple of plays, and then I did Grease, the national tour, small part in Grease, but was like, wow. I like this.
You got the bug.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's the real deal. I mean, that gets you on your toes.
8 shows a week.
Yeah, and it's funny because people would say to me, 8 shows a week, how do you do that? I'm like, 8 shows a week? I've done that and traveled 400 miles a day. 8 shows a week and I'm staying in the same place.
Yeah.
Give me a break. Grease I did, and then I did Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, did Pseudolist. Not as Zero Mostel, as a fat guy. I did it actually as Jerry Lewis meets Donald O'Connor or something.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And then there was a couple of others, and then I got this incredible opportunity. I got an audition for Aida in New York, and nailed it, and I played the villain. And that's when I started actually taking singing lessons. I had never done that before. I actually started taking proper...
To rebuild the instrument?
Not rebuild so much as get ready. It was more of because the demand of the role physically, vocally, physically, was such that I just kind of sensed, and also because was a little bit more, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Not formal. When you do a Broadway show, the vocals were just a little bit more full voice. Well, they call it covering the tones. It's a little more full voice. It's not rock. It's not rock and roll screaming kind of stuff.
Right.
A little bit more of a formal, presentation, musical theater kind of presentation, and it's a big difference when you're doing 8 shows a week.
Right.
So I just thought I should start, actually training, and thank goodness I did, and I ended up with this incredible vocal coach here in LA, who I must plug, named Erica Vitro, who just saved me, because it's like playing a sport. If you're just hacking around and playing on the weekends, it's fine. You probably won't hurt yourself. But if you're going out there and playing leagues or tournaments, if you don't warm up
properly,
if you don't practice, if you don't develop the muscle, and the vocal cords are a muscle. They're just muscles. They're these little muscles that go back and forth.
But they need to be exercised.
But they need to be exercised and taken care of, and they need to be treated properly, and warmed up, and built up, and get the strength up. Yeah, and I did that, and thank goodness I did, because I was out there, hitting a B flat every night in full voice for Aida for like 2 years, and that was a huge break and a wonderful experience. And
but again, a part of reinventing the talent, reinventing the awareness of talent. And as an artist, to stretch certain muscles and talents and abilities that you may not have even known if not for this particular experience. You can have a piece of that talent within you in terms of what was happening with the Monkees, or in terms of doing The Point in the London run and other shows. But until you get into that groove of a giant Broadway musical that was, I don't think all of those talents and focus and determination and thus ability that comes from it can see the light of day. And so is it as rewarding for you in the pocket of doing it that I want it to be?
Oh, more.
Yeah, good.
No, more. That was, yeah, that experience, that particular experience with Aida was huge. And it's funny, I mean, I was sitting in my dressing room on Broadway, the Palace Theater,
yeah,
Judy Garland's last performance.
But a lifelong goal too, I'm guessing.
No, not in that sense, because
I mean, since you saw your dad in his underwear.
Well, yeah, but I didn't know what it meant,
right.
So it wasn't like this goal. It was that I loved watching musicals on TV.
Okay.
I'd never seen one.
Right.
My father took me to La Boheme, in Italian when I was a kid, and I was like, Jesus Christ, get me home. This is really boring. I got to pee.
Right.
No, but when I did Aida, I remember sitting in my dressing room. Incredibly rewarding experience, but I remember sitting in my dressing room on Broadway towards the end of the run. It's been a couple of years, and I was adding up all the performances, because 8 a week. I was adding up. I was bored. I had nothing to do. I'm waiting to go on for the next cue, and I figured out that I had worked on Aida longer than I worked on the Monkees.
Holy crap. Holy crap. That's quite a revelation.
I add up the days.
Yeah.
I had worked on that show longer than I actually worked on the Monkee show.
Which people don't realize, I think, that was only 2 seasons.
It was 2 seasons. It was 26 episodes.
Exactly.
Which was a lot back. Now you don't get 26 necessarily, but
still,
back then 26 was standard.
Yeah.
26 episodes, 2 years, 50, 52, 3 days an episode, add it up, do the math.
Right.
I worked on Aida a lot longer than I had actually done the Monkey Show.
That's pretty fantastic. That's really fantastic.
It's weird.
Yeah. It is weird.
It's weird.
Did you do a tour of that?
Yeah, I did the national tour,
Right.
then I did Broadway.
Right.
Both, yeah.
Oh, man. And Hairspray, how much fun?
That was great. I'm doing it again in January. I did it in the West End for about half a year, and then I did the national tour. And then I'm doing a Philharmonic version.
Oh, boy.
In Baltimore and in Indianapolis in January. I've not done one of them before, you know, where you kind of put the play on in front of the orchestra, kind of.
Right.
It's not a full-blown production. It's, I guess it's like half and half. You know, you wear costumes and you do the dialogue and you sing the songs. You know, but
The idea is it's another creative experience.
yeah, I love doing musical theater.
You're hooked.
I'm up. Oh yeah, and I'm up for a couple of other things. One here in the States and another thing in the UK. I did Pippin, the revival of that, the old Stephen Schwartz show. I did that for a couple of years.
And you're loving it, clearly.
I love musical theater.
Yeah. I want to, first of all, thank you profusely for spending a couple hours with us. I know that wasn't your plan, but that's what has, in fact,
No, you told me it would be 2
happened.
hours.
I warned you?
You warned me.
You may not have believed me, though.
You warned me it would be a couple hours.
I'm going to allow you to get back to your life now. So people should immediately go to iTunes, and is there a dedicated website as well for the Remember album, the new CD?
Just MickyDolenz.com.
Yeah, you son of a bitch, just MickyDolenz.com.
Yeah,
Why do you got to
just
make it complicated?
MickyDolenz.com. What? What do you need? What?
And no E in Mickey, okay? He's not a mouse. You understand what I'm saying? Thank you greatly for that. We do a thing on the show, and in order to leave, I'm afraid you're going to have to offer up one little morsel of your talent. I love you as a comedian as well, and I think it's important for me to say that to you. I don't know how often you get it. That's none of my business, but I've always loved your work as a comic, as a comedic force on the TV show. That's how I first was introduced to you. Oh, look, they're singing. I like the songs too. But you made me laugh really, really hard. The silliness that you got to play on the show. Well, we've had a long-standing tradition on this show where at the end of the interview, I asked the guest to improvise a little thing. And it's called the Larry King game.
Oh, the King thing.
Yeah. And what it is over the years, Larry established that.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
King thing. I looked it up.
Oh, you did? Okay. So you know I want a bad Larry King impression.
King.
Yeah. I want him, then a little bumper where he shares something about himself that nobody wants to know. This is your camera. When you are ready, you may, and then go to the phones at the end of it.
King.
Yeah.
I hate this part.
Good.
Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali are the greatest fighters that I ever worked with. I made them who they are today. Larry King is bullshit. Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali, I made them what they are. Mike Tyson could not chew the ear off a fucking thing. I took him to Piggly Wiggly. I bought him a pig. I chewed his ear off. I showed him how to do it. Muhammad Ali, he was Cassius Clay. What does that mean? Cassius Clay. That's a Roman senator and mud. I gave him the name Muhammad Ali. Muhammad after the great man Muhammad and Ali fucking McGraw. Let's go to the phones. Connected.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Larry King as Don King. Well, that's genius. That's genius. And I bow once again to the genius that is you. All right. Oh, man, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. I love the setup, too, where you told me that it was painful and you didn't want to do it. Okay, the tour begins at the Greek, or that's just part of the tour?
That's third date.
Third date.
First date is Escondido. Second date is Santa Barbara.
Well, folks can go and check it out.
Oh, yeah.
The full tour schedule, I'm
Yeah,
sure, is
absolutely,
also
yeah.
at your website.
Yeah.
How long will this first part of the tour be, or we don't know?
It's only 12 dates.
Oh, great. Okay.
And we end up back east, 12 dates, and then who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
I have no...
You've learned at this point to stop predicting what might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Honestly and truly.
Thank you.
A great, great thrill and pleasure for me. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Sit there uncomfortably for 40 seconds while I wrap things up, please.
Okay.
I want to thank the crew here, Dr. Chan and Jamie, in lieu of Sammy. And Elaine Ewing is out there to remind me to thank her as well. Jamie, did you have something to add?
The chat room is asking that you cut to me because they want to see my hat.
Oh, there it is, Mike Nesmith hat.
I put it on because I got cold. The air conditioning's so
Well, that's
cold
why
here.
it was originally designed, because Mike was always getting cold. So he would wear that cap. And Josh, Justin, and Jason out there and running the Outer Circle, Samantha Ward on makeup. And we're going to take a little break as I'm going to do a little touring for my own book, first week in November, with various The Today Show and Jimmy Fallon and Craig Ferguson and all that stuff. And then we'll come back with a great television creator and writer who, November 18th, is that when Sean is here? Look on the calendar real quick just to verify. I thought I had it here a moment ago, my own damn self. Let's see. Here it comes, wait for it. Yes, November 18th, Sean Ryan. If you enjoy The Shield, the classic show, and his new show, The Chicago Code. Anyways, can't wait to talk to him about that and more. And more guests to come before the end of the year. We'll post them momentarily. All right, so that's our show today. Historical for me, and I hope you as well. Until next time, and as always, get out of my face.